We lead today's show with a News 24 exclusive that the MK party flew some of its members to Russia to train as bodyguards, only for them to be deployed, apparently unknowingly, to the front lines of a war. And now it appears former President Jacob Zuma wants them moved to a safe space.
So we obtained a copy of the two-page letter. It was dated 19 September. And it bears what appears to be Zuma's signature on the letter, and it was addressed to the Russian defense minister. And then Zuma basically begged them to remove the men from the combat zone and send them to a safer location.
And how did an obscure northern Indian digital agency turn into a global fake news factory, spouting all sorts of Sassa nonsense right here in Mzansi?
In the source code of this stolen community radio station website, I found one little reference to a company deep in the source code, and it was to a company called IT Fames Private Limited. And it was one of those old school kind of journalism moments where I saw it and I just thought, jackpot. This is the company that hundreds of people have been trying to identify, governments have been debunking, and I've been sitting agonizing over who's spreading all of this disinformation throughout South Africa and the world.
You'll hear a lot more about these incredible stories from our top journalists, Iavan, Pijoos and Andrew Thompson, next. Finally, at the end of the show, Angola gained independence on this day in South African history.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
Just a quick hot take from me. Can't believe the inventor of the Please Call Me service now faces potential more litigation. We'll talk about that. Thanks so much to 10X Investments for sponsoring us this November. Let's get on with the show. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer. This is The Lead, and this is the South African story. This episode of The Lead is brought to you by 10X Investments. 10X, your future. Moving to our top story today, it's a News 24 exclusive. It's alleged they first signed up for a Mkhonto Wesizwe Party program to become the MKP's official bodyguards by training in Russia. Instead, it's now, however, understood that this handful of men has been parachuted into the front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, a letter seen by News 24 and signed by MKP leader and former President Jacob Zuma is calling on Russia's defense ministry to return the men to South Africa as soon as possible. Journalist Iavan has this story and joins me live on The Lead now for his debut edition. Iavan, how are you doing?
Hi, Graeme. Thanks for having me. I'm good, thanks, brother. How are you?
Yeah, man, can't complain. Thank you so much for bringing us this exclusive story today. It's quite an unbelievable one. How did you guys uncover this? I know you and Sakaseni and Kamalo did great work here.
Yeah, so, Graeme, what happened was last week, Thursday, the presidency sent out a statement, and they said 17 South African men were trapped in a war-torn Donbass in Ukraine. So the initial statement of the presidency said it was a group of men between the ages of 20 and 39, and they apparently sent a distress call for assistance to return home. And then that's how we uncovered the story. It was Thursday when the story broke, and these men are all from KZN except one who's from the Eastern Cape. So in the presidency statement, it was also said that it was alleged that they were lured into joining mercenary forces involved in the Ukraine-Russian war, and then under the pretext of lucrative employment contracts. So that's all we knew at that stage. After the presidency sent out the statement and the story broke about this group of men that were stuck in Ukraine, a source reached out to us. And then I met with the source. And then that's how all of this uncovered.
Then you got this letter, Iavan, that carried former President Jacob Zuma's signature. And very curiously, what does that letter reveal?
So we obtained a copy of the two-page letter. It was dated 19 September. And it bears what appears to be Zuma's signature on the letter. And it was addressed to the Russian defense minister. And then Zuma basically begged them to remove the men from the combat zone and send them to a safer location. And also in Zuma's letter, he referred what stood out for us when we wrote the story. Zuma referred to 18 men, and the presidency referred to 17 in their statement that they previously sent out last week. And when we spoke to the source, it was quite surprising when the source told us that actually it was more than 20. So for us, it was still a bit unclear what happened to the rest of the men. And also in Zuma's letter, the letter that Zuma wrote, it was apparently circulated among the men. So they were told that, look, we are getting help. Zuma wrote this letter to the defense minister, and that was part of his efforts to get them out.
Sure.
So parts of the letter was, Zuma said that these men were misled by a former soldier within the Russian army, and this man is believed to be from South Africa. So he apparently facilitated the enrollment, but it was not for officer training. It was as intended. It was initially intended for officer training program, but later they uncovered it was for standard basic infantry contract. They were basically signed. These men basically signed contracts to fight in active combat in war.
Right. But then, Iavan, what did your source say to you, and what have you guys uncovered as a reporting duo? If you look at, some of the concerned family members who have chosen to remain anonymous, what have you learned about the journey for these men to Russia and the initial program that they signed up for? So what, they were going to be trained to be the official bodyguards for senior members of the MKP. They were then deployed, and then, as you say, came under false pretenses and then were deployed to the front lines. Take us through that journey. What was the idea initially?
So when we spoke to the source said these guys were weeks leading up to the departure. They were informed that they would go for this training and come back and work in the protection unit of the MK party. So then the source also said that it was done in secret, and it was sold as this professional thing. And then they were also told to pack lightly, like just a small bag, passport, and a jacket. And then they departed from OR Tambo on 8 July. And then they took a flight to Dubai. And then what was interesting there was what the source said they were stranded there for 2 days. And there was this issue with paperwork, but then it was sorted out. It was still unclear what happened with that paperwork. So after they arrived in Russia, the source said families of these men didn't hear from them for at least 10 days. And we believe that the phones were taken. And after there was a brief re-establishing of contact, and then the families were told that there were no training academies or professional programs available for them. Instead, like I mentioned earlier, they were sent to a remote location for about 3 weeks, and then there they received basic military training.
Sure.
And shortly after that, this is where they discovered that this is not what we signed up for. They learned that they were destined for Ukraine and for war.
Yes. And then you paint the scene that, suddenly these men found themselves on the front lines and there were drones flying up above their heads. It must have been harrowing.
Yeah, so the source said, when they were taken to this remote location, when they got there, everything that they had on them, like your shoes, whatever, your jackets, were put into a fire and burned. And then they were given, they were left with nothing, just their underwear. And then they were given military clothes, like uniforms, and then put into trucks. And yeah, like you mentioned, Graeme, they were staying underground in holes. There were drones flying everywhere. And then, like, reality kicked in. They realized that they were literally at the front line fighting a war.
When you got this letter, Iavan, and you took it to the MKP for it to check its veracity, as any good journalist would do, what was the response from the official communications team there, did they know anything about it?
When we did final checks for the story on Monday, Sakiseni managed to he reached out to the MK party spokesperson, and we showed them the letter, and they could neither confirm or deny the authenticity of the letter, but confirmed that it bore Zuma's signature. So yeah, that was what we got from them, and then we were told, the spokesperson told us, okay, phone me later. He asked for a copy of the letter, and which was sent to them. And then he asked that we call him around, I think it was 7:30 last night. And he never got back to us, never answered his calls,
Sure.
We never got back to us.
Right. I'd imagine you would have then gone back to the presidency. You'd initially, obviously had that initial statement that set the wheels in motion for this entire story and for the source to come forward. You then go back to Vincent Mgwenya, right? And what did the official presidency line say in regards to the Zuma letter and everything that you had uncovered thus far? Any real traction there?
I reached out to Vincent to get comment on the from the presidency about the letter that Zuma allegedly wrote to the Russian defense minister, and all Vincent said was they are not commenting on any specifics that I've raised. There was other questions that I've asked him, if the SA authorities are attempting to speak to Russia authorities, or have they spoken to them already? And the main thing, what we asked them was, how did they find out about this incident? Because the confusion about this, the source said, was who leaked the information to the presidency, because it was done in such a secret that basically no one knew about this. So all we knew at the time was there was these 17 men lured to join mercenary forces. At that time, we obviously didn't know who sent them. So Vincent didn't really respond to our questions. He just said the investigations are ongoing.
Sure. Such an intriguing story, because on one hand, you would have think that the presidency would have a lot more knowledge of this, perhaps call me naive. And then on the other side of it, a very secretive program it would appear to be, or clandestine enough, that your own MKP official party spokesperson has allegedly no knowledge of said program. There's a lot of unanswered questions, I'm sure, Iavan.
So, Graeme, we are still staying on the story. There's a lot of unanswered questions around this. And the main concern is what the source says, the safety of these men. They are very worried, the families. The families are very worried about these men's safety at this moment because, like I said, they are in the front lines fighting a war.
Right. And I think it's also just pertinent to also say this at this stage, Iavan, is that the presidency itself has indicated that under the Foreign Military Assistance Act, what's happening here is supremely illegal, unless it was authorized by the presidency, and there's no indication at this stage to say that it was.
Graeme, in the statement that the president sent out last week, Thursday, they said that under the Foreign Military Assistance Act of 1998, it is illegal for South African citizens and entities to offer or provide military assistance, to foreign governments or participate in armies of foreign governments, unless it was authorized by South African government. But it doesn't seem like it was authorized by the South African government, because we are not getting answers from them at all. I think that's why they said that our President Cyril Ramaphosa has ordered an investigation into, the circumstances that led to the recruitment of these young men. So that's where we are at with the presidency.
Right. Look, South Africa has such a long history of members here, people that go on to be private mercs, soldiers of fortune abroad. There's a long history of that, but the particular details, of what led up to and the different idea that was given initially for these men to go abroad. It's such a peculiar story. We have Darren Olivier. He's a defense analyst, speaks often on these issues on social media. He says, quote unquote, not only is this looking like a Russia-South Africa diplomatic incident, but the MK party has serious questions to answer around this training. Who approved it? Who vetted the provider? And who paid? Surely criminal charges are plausible here. Just to end off, we did get some comment, and I think you were helped out by your colleague Amanda Koza here from the Ukrainian government based here in South Africa. The Ukrainian ambassador Alexander Sherba did issue some comment. Basically, they're saying, look, there's nothing that we can really do at this stage. We'll see how this sort of thing pans out, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He told Amanda during her interview, and then he basically said that there was no way for them or for the Ukrainian government to assist them in bringing them back, and aside from them surrendering and they become prisoners of war. And that is what's scary for the families, and they are worried about that, the safe return of these men.
Sure. If you want to read the full story, SOS, MK party members stuck in Russia-Ukraine war after bogus, quote-unquote, bodyguard training. What an intriguing story. That's Iavan Pijoos, joined by his colleagues in penning the story, Sassa Malo, as well as Amanda Koza. Iavan, thanks so much for joining us on your debut edition of The Lead. You're a radio podcast natural.
Thanks so much for the compliment, Graeme.
At 10X Investments, we don't only help you invest for retirement, we help you craft a legacy. With thoughtful planning and meticulous execution, you can create the retirement future you've always wanted. Invest with us today. 10X your future. 10X is a licensed FSB.
Trending topic.
Moving to our trending topic for today, I've been wanting to have this conversation for quite a while now, wondering who's got the time to shovel out AI slop and disseminate fake news across social media the world over. Well, today, the News 24 disinformation desk, backed by non-profit Truth First, can confidently reveal the major source behind such drivel. A lot of it leads back to a fairly obscure digital agency currently run out of a northern Indian city. What a peculiar story. Some expert code sleuthing by disinformation desk editor Andrew Thompson got us here. He's in the hot seat here in The Lead today. It's great to have you again, Andrew. How's it?
Good to be here. Thanks. Yeah, it's. I think this is a fun one.
Absolutely. And the story we're alluding to is Bolt using the shorthand site, exposed the fake news factory led by Andrew Thompson. A fantastic piece that you guys have put together. It's really, really, really detailed. It carries a lot of impetus, and I think it's quite the blueprint for sort of trying to figure out fake news these days. Let's begin here. I know for a long time you've been circling the source of these fake news articles that keep popping up about Sassa, about traffic, about load shedding, whatever's going to be a hot button issue. These fake news articles seem to latch onto that. Give us some more recent examples of what you sort of came across before we delve deeper into the source behind all of this.
Yeah, I think since May, and we've had a previous discussion around a similar topic as well, there's been a deluge of these wild stories that to many of us look like absolute nonsense just off the bat, so some of the examples are Sassa cuts payments above 8,070 Rand. The other one, millions to get 10 Rand more from Sassa. Sassa post-bank dispute delays grant payments. Sassa monthly grants increased for 2025. Retirement age rule change, that's a huge one. It just constantly keeps coming up. This whole story about the retirement age in South Africa is changing. That's a big one. So a very, very similar common theme throughout all of these stories. Occasionally they would delve into traffic laws. I saw one about A.B. de Villiers and cricket. So they cover the full ambit of nonsense. But they have been gaining traction, and it's been irking me for a long time because increasingly governments have had to come out and say this is all fake news. And during the course of this investigation, we found governments as far as Australia having to issue clear statements against this company that we managed to identify and reveal. So it's not just a Cape Town issue or a South Africa issue, it's a worldwide issue. And these guys for a long time have been hiding behind sheer anonymity of the internet.
What was this breakthrough in your searching through website code, right? That got you to essentially, as I'm describing it, triangulate the real source of this AI nonsense that you've been looking at for the longest time. What did it entail for you as Andrew having to do in order to find the source of it all?
Basically, I employed a field of investigation called OSINT, or Open Source Intelligence, and it's basically looking through information that exists on the internet that's quite clear and accessible, but you have to know where to find it and how to, and triangulate's a good word, how to triangulate all of these pieces of information to point towards a specific target. In this case, there was a radio station in northern KwaZulu-Natal, a community radio station that lost its website to this fake news company. And something about that website looked different. It had a different design, but it had the same hallmarks, and we'll go into the hallmarks and how to identify these stories shortly. And those hallmarks made me realize that there was actually something was up. And that gave me new impetus to start searching through the source code. And anyone can search through the source code of any website. You right-click it and you go Show Web Inspector, and it shows you all the source code. And often that's where the biggest clues are hiding. These guys have been very clever for many months of me tracking them to hide all of the information. They even went so far as to put false addresses on their websites, false telephone numbers. I tried all of them. None of them came to anything. But in the source code of this stolen community radio station website, I found one little reference to a company deep in the source code, and it was to a company called IT Fames Private Limited. And it was one of those old school kind of journalism moments where I saw it and I just thought, jackpot! This is the company that hundreds of people have been trying to identify, governments have been debunking, and I've been sitting agonizing over who's spreading all of this disinformation throughout South Africa and the world. And now I know the name of the company that's responsible for it. And it was hidden deep in the source code of one of their websites.
Absolutely fascinating. So what is IT Fames? Where is it based? Who's in charge? What type of agency is this? Is it run out of a strip mall? Take us, paint a picture.
So obviously the first thing I did was ping this into Google Maps, because I was desperate to see how big this massive operation was. And what I found was a fairly devastating picture of a fairly poverty-stricken town in northern India in the foothills of the Himalayas. And I walked down the street in Google Street View, and eventually I found a little sign. They'd put their address in correctly in their business records, but I found a little sign 2 or 3 doors down on the second floor of the only kind of concrete building in this whole area, wedged between a gym and a car dealership that said IT Fames Private Limited. And that was really the start of actually starting to put a picture to this company that is actually not a particularly lavish or extravagant company. It's actually a fairly embarrassingly small second floor of the building. It's not a hell of a lot going on there, seemingly. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized that this, like many other companies in India, was one that started as the internet age sort of boomed, and there was people were looking to India for cheap labor, easy access to things like search engine optimization, online marketing. It's far cheaper than anywhere else in the world. And it seems, from what I can look at in the company records, that it started as a legitimate low-budget SEO company. We'll help you get higher search engine rankings. What I think ultimately ended up happening is they struck upon this idea of stealing old websites, using those domains to seed them with fake news, and ultimately get massive amounts of clicks and traction and traffic. And if I was to be kind, I would say they lost their way from a legitimate company to one that clearly operates on the darker side of ethics.
How many websites in South Africa do you know about that this particular agency, that they have managed to once the expiry date reaches for a website, they latch on, they're pirates, they jump the deck, they get on board. It's now ours, they buy it, or whatever the case. Keep the about section of the previous company that used to be in charge there, which I thought was quite interesting to still keep up an air of legitimacy. How many of those companies are you aware of?
I mean, the number changes daily, but at the peak, I found 48 different URLs that they had taken. That included South Africa, Australia, the UK, a few in the US. But the complexity of the whole matter is that as soon as we would debunk a story or reveal a website, which we've done in previous articles, that website would often disappear or auto-forward to another one. So it fluctuates, but I would say dozens. There are dozens of websites putting out dozens of stories every day that are entirely baseless and entirely fake. And that's the scope of the problem, and they continue to this day. There are... I checked today, the websites that we've revealed and exposed today have 4 or 5 new fake news stories that exist.
Sure.
So it's either total disdain or disregard, or they don't even realize that, that the world is now looking at them going, you guys are actually just the source of a lot of this disinformation.
And just to confirm, this is not just South Africa, right? It's Australia, it's the UK, all your Commonwealths.
Yeah. And what's interesting is they clearly are trying to tap into certain topics in different locales. So in Australia, it's mostly about driving laws, and the ones that have gone viral there and that government ministers have had to debunk there have been around new driving laws for over 70s, new driving laws late at night. You can't drive barefoot in Australia. These sorts of like really odd niche stories, but obviously that's what Australians seem to care about, so those have gone viral. In the UK, it's a lot around pensions, it's a lot around Keir Starmer, it's a lot more politicized there. And in South Africa, it's primarily Sassa grants and more issues relating at a level of sort of poverty and desperation in this country. So I suspect what they've done is done a very high-level kind of AI search for what are the most topical issues in each country, and then they've said produce 200 articles on each of these topics, and then they basically just copy-paste all of those articles. It's a cookie-cutter production line that they're operating out of this office, and yeah, until now, nobody knew who it was. They just knew that these stories were popping up, and increasingly, I think we're still going to see more and more of them until eventually the authorities actually step in and shut them down, if they ever do.
So you're in this rush, you found the source code, you see the articles, you can understand the various websites that have been hijacked, and you obviously, as any good journalist would do, ask for right of reply, and you go to the obscure Indian agency itself. You've identified those in charge via very easy to find, say, Facebook links linked with the Facebook page to the obvious business. I mean, that's normal practice. What was their response?
Yeah, so I mean, to actually get to them there was a complexity of that. Just to rewind slightly, is that there was this common name that people in South Africa would have seen if they've seen this fake news called Priya Sachdeva, and that was a totally fabricated.
This is an alleged journalist profile, right?
So a fabricated journalist profile, and when I found using these OSINT techniques, reference to Priya Sachdeva on the IT Fame's corporate website, so their own little private website, it was hidden deep in their source code too. I knew that they were connected because no one else was using this fake journalistic persona with the same profile picture, which is fairly easy to find if you know what you're looking for in the source code of their website. So I knew confidently that I had the target, and I also through the course of the investigation had collected all of their contact details. So I sent them an email, and within about 15 minutes they responded, denying all connection to any of the websites that I'd presented to them. When I then followed up with all of the evidence that I had, they changed their tune, and they quickly said it must have been a third party that had inserted this information into their website, and please can I send them all the details that I have.
The straw man argument. So
that I can assist them to remove references of their names to the website, clearly just desperate to find out where I'd found this reference to their company.
Did you show them the Easter egg?
I told them exactly where it was hidden, and they said they were going to write to the website administrator to have it removed. And it's no coincidence that the next day they had stripped that little bit of reference to their company name. Of course, I hadn't told them about the 10 other websites that had exactly the same source code in it, and those still exist. So, I regularly go on to check if they've realized that 10 other websites also operating in the fake news space.
Well, they could be listening right now, Andrew.
Still have the same name. So if they are listening, I'd welcome them to go and correct all of that as well. Because, it's... but it is important to say that they denied all connection to this. But,
of course.
But as we laid out in the article, the connections are very clear and irrefutable.
Somebody might come along and go, so what? How do you respond to that? Because from the very little that I know about this sort of game, they're making revenue through traffic and clicks, right?
Yeah. So I think in the disinformation space, this is the least unnerving aspect of it. Aspects of political disinformation, war, immigration, those topics are the ones that really will keep me awake at night. This is a grifter trying to make a bit of money on the side. So it's not affecting anyone on a massive dynamic kind of ethical level.
This isn't Bal Pottinger, in other words.
Exactly. But I think what's intriguing to me is since I started tracking them, they had a little WhatsApp channel that they used to spread their disinformation to people who believe it. When I first started tracking it, it had 20,000 people as members of this channel. It now, about 3 weeks later, has 50,000 people. And they post one of these stories a day onto this channel. And it's almost
a WhatsApp channel.
A WhatsApp channel. And it's almost invariably about Sassa, about grants. And I think why we should care is that if you've got a family member or someone in your space who is already getting what is a very small amount as a Sassa grant, and they are just being flooded with this disinformation, it's going to undermine every aspect of their existence. But I think there's that, and the other aspect is that it's very easy to flick a switch on this disinformation and suddenly turn it into something political. And with our government elections coming up shortly, with the hotbed political topics that exist in this country, it's very easy for that to change from a Sassa grant to mobilizing people for far more violent or nefarious aspects. And I think it all speaks to information hygiene in this country that we really need to be aware of, and we really need to know how to spot it and how to get rid of it before it becomes a problem. And that's just one of the many aspects of this disinformation desk that I think is really important to keep news and information as sanitized as possible.
Well, let's have that conversation now. And this is your 101 class, your vital opportunity with Uncle Andrew Thompson. He's going to take you through what you need to know now in order to identify effectively if you think, hey, my spidey senses are going off. I think this looks like a load of crap. What are the hallmark tenets? Let's go off the basic image of one of these fake news articles within the context of what's being spewed out of this Northern Indian digital agency. What are the key things to look at right from the get-go and right from the logo? Take us down that article.
Sure. So the first one is a generic logo. And you'll see in the articles that we've put out, we've done a good job of highlighting the various logos that these sites use, and they look like the kind of thing that you would plug into a prompt on a graphic design AI, and it would spit something out, usually with text, usually with two colors. So the one I'm looking at right now is North Coast Radio. It's got a little radio antenna built into the text of the logo. It's not the kind of logo that a radio station would spend much money on. So it looks instantly cheap. Then almost always to the right, because they all use the same template, is a little menu bar. And the most hilarious thing about this is that menu bar has the generic stuff like about us, contact us, disclaimer. And then almost invariably they've got editorial policy, which is a laughable editorial policy. And below that is a fact-checking policy, which is... It speaks to the almost some degree of self-awareness that what they're doing is absolute nonsense. And that fact-checking policy is probably the best written part of the whole website, and they've lifted it from somewhere or polished it up with AI. So if you've got that logo and then you've got this little menu bar next to it with those items, you can immediately start feeling the spidey senses going off. But I think that's the most critical thing is as soon as you feel something is off, that's when you got to lean into it. And if you look at it, why would a shooting range or a Cape Town high school or a community radio station be publishing these types of stories? And you need to lean into that cynicism and that skepticism about it off the bat. And then go down, the next thing that you'll see is a very generic headline. It's almost always got a long M dash, which is a very common telltale sign of a AI-generated headline, and it's super sensational. So the one I'm looking at here is 8,000 Rand rooftop solar support October, offer income caps home ownership rules and renters options. Why would that really significant news exist on an obscure North Coast radio website? And that headline is almost always when you just know, actually stop right here, don't share it. If you have to, send it to us at the disinformation desk, and we'll tell you whether it's true or not and debunk it. And then probably the next most obvious thing is a very generic AI-generated image, often using South African politicians. And Cyril Ramaphosa seems to be a very common one in these images. If you zoom in, you can just see that it's soft around the edges. It's not a real photograph. It doesn't exist. Why would he be posing in front of a house with solar panels? And there's very often a South African flag in the featured image and the headline of the story. It just doesn't look right. And I think it's...
Not even just Cyril Ramaphosa, sometimes a generic older black man.
Exactly, yeah. So clearly there are people in this fake news factory, as we dubbed it, who don't know who Cyril Ramaphosa is, but they might know that there are black people in South Africa. And so they will literally just type in a generic mixture of, one black person, one white person looking at a solar panel in South Africa. And suddenly there's Table Mountain appears in the background, or, vaguely familiar politicians. So I think the main lesson I think we must learn from this is as soon as we feel that sense that something is up and something is unfamiliar or is odd, the key is not to forward it to as many people as you possibly can. It is to immediately delete it. And if someone's forwarded that to you, respond and say, this is not true and please do not forward this anymore. And I think the more we can do that and the more we can gently call out people in our social circles and communities not to forward fake news like that, the more we can slowly start winning this war against people just forwarding it, quote unquote, just in case, which I think is so often the case. And then I forward it to you just in case, and you forward it to someone else just in case. And then that's how it continues to proliferate through the system. Exposed,
the fake news factory, penned by our expert disinformation desk editor, Andrew Thompson, along with the rest of the team here at News 24, is really some fantastic, sterling journalism work. This is award-winning stuff, Andrew, and I hope it goes a long way to starting to educate a lot more people in South Africa as we know it. Of course, if you're a News 24 subscriber, you can check out the whole thing. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to have been here again.
And finally,
ending off with On This Day in South African history, the 11th of November 1975. On this very day, Angola gained independence after 14 years of armed resistance against Portuguese colonial rule. The three main liberation movements, the MPLA, FNLA and UNITA, had signed the Alvor Agreement earlier that year. But political divisions quickly led to civil war. The MPLA, backed by Cuba and the Soviet Union, seized power, whilst UNITA, supported by South Africa and the United States, continued to fight on. Angola's independence became a turning point for liberation movements across southern Africa. It provided a base for groups including ZAPU, SWAPO, as well as South Africa's ANC, in which it established military training camps there, including Umkhonto we Sizwe fighters. By 1976, ANC soldiers were training in camps near Luanda, with bases later set up across that country. The struggle in Angola helped sustain regional liberation efforts. It also, however, drew the country into one of Africa's longest and most complex post-colonial conflicts. Before we end off, just with my hot take for today, I can't believe it. The Please Call Me Inventor faces a new fight as offshore firm now wants 40% of his payout. That's according to journalist Jan Cronier from News 24 Business. A British Virgin Islands company called BlackRock Mining, it's not related to the well-known BlackRock firm based out in the United States, they now want a cut, 40% of Nkosana Makate's final agreement and settlement with Vodacom. Makate, of course, who was a training accountant at Vodacom, had first initially pitched that please call me idea in November 2000. That's 25 years ago. And only a settlement was just recently reached. We don't know the full amount. This BlackRock mining company says a 2011 agreement entitles them to 40% of this award. But according to Volna Libbe, who's part of the legal team that's been representing Makate for the past decade, BlackRock's argument is not with merit, and that apparently the contract with BlackRock Mining has been rescinded long ago. Very interestingly. Just leave this guy alone. Let him enjoy his money. I can't believe that he has to now deal with this. And it's echoed in your comments as well. Bahia writes in the comment section, advised by hyenas that were feeding on a dead corpse. The ulterior motive was to make sure that they benefited from billions payout. I feel sorry for this poor man and the stress that he endured over the years. Le Sardine writes, this is like a bolt out of the blue. No one saw it coming. And then Funky Capetonian writes, that a party rescinds an agreement does not mean that the other party has no case or a legitimate claim. A unilateral rescission does not necessarily bring an agreement to end. It depends whether the rescission was legally justified. And that this could result in another massive saga. Very, very sad that he has to now deal with yet another case. And I just wonder how much he's going to get out of all of this at the end of the day with all the various legal fees. Although, things have been settled, he has another potential case. And as you've also pointed out in the comment section, what about SARS? What does SARS have to say about all of this? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this gentleman is owed an entire lifetime over and should be getting what he's due. And here comes another spanner in the works. It's funny how we're only learning about this now. Well, that's today's show. Thanks so much to 10X Investments for sponsoring this edition. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe on all our various platforms, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. That way you'll be notified exactly when the lead drops. Like clockwork, Monday to Thursday at 7 p.m. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have the lead. This episode of The Lead was brought to you by 10X Investments. 10X, your future.